Hello, I'm Hannah Kaplan, and this is the WCS Wild Audio Podcast, where you'll find reported audio stories covering the latest news and newsmakers from the Wildlife Conservation Society's Global Conservation Program, Zoos and Aquarium, and their many partners. We've got a great show today, so let's get to it. Winner of the Conservation Prize at this year's New York Wild Film Festival, Hamid Sardar's documentary film, Mongolia, Valley of the Bears, highlights a clash between the traditions of a nomadic community in northern Mongolia and one dedicated ranger's mission to conserve wildlife in the boreal taiga. Nat Moss has the story.
Hamid Sardar came to filmmaking as a natural progression from his background as a scholar of Inter-Asian languages and culture. With a PhD from Harvard, he's fluent in Tibetan, Nepali, Sanskrit, and Mongolian. It was while traveling with nomadic hunters in Mongolia that he first met the ranger Jal Tumersuk, who would become the central figure in his new documentary.
As an ethnographer and anthropologist, usually found myself working with and studying nomadic tribes and their hunting, shamanic traditions. And a few times, actually, we were arrested by Tumersuk, the ranger, fined for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But it was during that time that my respect for this man grew, because his charisma, his determination was impressive, even though he was an adversary to the people I was working with. So when French television contacted me to make this film, he seemed to be the logical choice of the environmental hero.
Hamid also found himself grappling with a new non-human actor, climate change.
My previous films, they all have this underlying theme of man's place in nature. And more recently, there's this other narrative of climate change and how it's affecting people, nomads, traditional societies in these regions in the Himalayas, in Inter-Asia and Central Asia, and how, for example, the nomadic people living in Mongolia, how they're coping with climate change and how that changes their whole relationship with nature and wild animals.
Hamid's original plan for the film was to focus on the return of the snow leopard to the region after its absence for many years. But the elusive cat proved difficult to find, much less film in the wild.
We were already almost halfway through the filming, and we had not even come close to even seeing a scat or a footprint of the animal. And then suddenly, northern Mongolia was invaded by bears who were running from forest fires on the other side of the border in Russia. And they were basically being chased out of their homes. So in a sense, these bears were animal climate change refugees.
In the Asian boreal forest, or taiga, says Hamid, you have these big forest fires that never completely go out. Rather, they go underground.
For years, Siberia has been burning, and this is how local communities, local habitats start to feel the effect of climate change around the world. Each region experiences its own difficulties and symptoms, but they're all caused by this general shift in climate which we're experiencing on the planet as a whole, as a species.
Shortly after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Mongolia's government transitioned from a centrally planned economy to a market economy. Rampant commercial hunting and mining wreaked havoc on the environment. With a handful of rangers, Tumersuk had cleaned up the rivers and the forest of the region, evicted the miners, and imposed a ban on hunting wildlife. Hamid says that when the bears arrived in Tumersuk's village, he shifted his focus immediately from snow leopards to the bears. Now he'd be following Tumersuk.
When these bears began to attack all the livestock, it wasn't just this dangerous wild animal out there. It was almost as if they were an expression of the wrath of nature. This added to the sense of fear and terror in the community. Many local people wanted to kill these bears, but Tumersuk was able to deflect this and turned it into an opportunity for raising awareness.
A central part of the documentary follows Tumersuk and his team as they airlift the bears north to their boreal home with the help of outside animal welfare agencies. Filming the bears' release proved quite difficult.
This film was unlike anything I had done before. Logistically, it was quite a challenging shoot. I decided to go alone. I didn't take a crew with me, but I trained 2 local nomads to be next to me as camera assistants the whole time. The 3 of us were on horseback following the rangers. I had one horseman pulling a pack horse with a drone, an extra bag of lenses, and another also hauling supplies next to me.
When the bears are released, the viewer is treated to an extraordinary drone shot capturing 2 of the bears as they make their way back into the forest.
You get one chance to do a shot like that. I had one main drone and a small one. I sent them both up in the air, and I just hoped for the best. We got lucky on that scene, and it really told the story, the way the bears kind of weaved through the trees and decided to cross the river. When at some point you see one of the bears kind of sit and look back as if in disbelief, are we really free?
Hamid began editing the day's footage every evening and then invited the rangers to come sit with him and watch.
They suddenly saw themselves and they realized that they had a stake in this film. This was going to be their story. And they began to help me actually direct the film, saying, well, I mean, if you wanted to show a drying lake, maybe there's a better lake which shows it over the ridge, so maybe tomorrow we can go film over there. So basically they began to actually participate in directing the film, which was kind of new for me and quite rewarding, to actually open the whole directing process to the people you're actually filming.
Hamid says that too often films about conservation and climate change can be didactic, leaving audiences cynical or even bored at times. Many people recoil from a lot of grim statistics about how much glaciers have melted or how much temperatures have risen in the ocean.
It was important for me to raise these issues, but through a different kind of cinematography, almost reading as a adventure, a thriller, and to inspire people to the character of a central person who is just charismatic and easy to watch.
And indeed, the narrative becomes quite sober in one section of the film when Tumersuk becomes separated from the group in the dense forest and then, with a broken ankle, records a message to explain what has happened in case he doesn't make it. Throughout, the film is imbued with the insight and perspective that Hamid brings as an ethnographic scholar. His message is at once powerful and very moving.
In many parts of Asia, especially in Mongolia, the animal still possesses its soul. For the shamanic and Buddhist culture of Mongolia, animals not only have souls, they're considered to be totems in the sense that they're a family. The Mongols descend from the clan of the wolf and the deer. The bear is referred to as the grandfather, the old man of the mountain, and they're creatures of heaven. They're messengers. And these 3 bears in Tumersuk's imagination, the local population, they came with a prophecy. And the message they came with was one of dire warning of climate change and to us humans to get our act together.
For WCS Wild Audio, this is Nat Moss.
Today's episode was produced and reported by Nat Moss, with help from Hannah Kaplan and Dan Rosen. The WCS Wild Audio Podcast is a production of the Wildlife Conservation Society. Please join us next week for a new episode, and don't forget to rate or review the show wherever you get your podcast.